What's going on, everybody? Training camp is here. It's the first day of practice. My 7th training camp, which is pretty wild to think, but I wanted to share my top 3 training camp memories heading into this year's training camp. So my first one is going to be the training camp competition between Nick Foles and Michael Vick for the starting quarterback job. It was Chip Kelly's first year. It was deciding who was going to be the quarterback. And I remember just every single day tracking like, all right, who's playing better today? Who's in the lead now? Who's going to start the 3rd preseason game? Who could run the offense better? It's got to be Michael Vick, right? Because he can run, but Nick Foles is playing so great. Nick Foles has no shot. That's what everyone kind of thought. And I remember that was the first year where like practice observations really were a big deal because every day I would track what Nick Foles was doing. I would track Michael Vick. I would compare the stats at the end, and I would have all the stats at the end of practice or at the end of the week, end of the month, whatever. And I could say, all right, here's what they did. Here's what here's what Vick did. Here's what Foles did. And that was kind of my first like foray into how crazy training camp is, how much people crave that content, and how much can change. I mean, when that training camp started, people expected Vick to win it, but we weren't even sure who the quarterback was. And now I guess it's similar with Wentz and Foles because of the injury, but now you look at how far the Eagles have come with actually having a franchise quarterback. Once again, Nick Foles is involved. So my second training camp memory is a little more somber, but I remember it was my first training camp, 2012, so Andy Reid's last year. And I remember that training camp, unfortunately, Andy Reid's son passed away due to an overdose in the Lehigh dorms. And I'm an intern at the time. I come to practice, like, not knowing at all what to expect. I remember standing on the sideline as the team huddled, and I believe it was Jeffrey Lurie at the time, like, kind of talked to the players. I think Howie was out there. And then everyone's like, is Andy going to talk? Like, understanding if he wouldn't. He comes into the tent, and remember, we're at Lehigh University, so at the time, we're not at the NovaCare. Like, it's a small tent off to the side. Everyone's kind of crowded in. I'm an intern, so I don't know, like, what I'm doing. I'm just kind of, like, sitting there watching, and Andy goes up and he talks for, I remember it being like 5 or 10 minutes, maybe it was longer, and I do think he took questions, but I just remember thinking how like strong he looked up there and how like the ability to talk and go up there. And I remember writing afterwards on NJ.com as my internship, like how he was exactly what the team needed at that moment, coming off of a pretty traumatic event with the coach's son dying in the dorms that you're staying in. He gets up there, he talks, and I just thought it was really strong of him. So that was my second memory. But my third memory is also from my first training camp, and that was, all right, so I'm at Lehigh. The funny thing is the first day I lock my keys in the car by accident, which I'm already like, all right, so this is off to a bad start. Someone has to come and let me in. So anyway, so I'm up at Lehigh, and the way they used to do it then, the players would like check into the dorms, and so the media members would stand one place and then run down the hill when the players came, or run over this way when this guy checked in. So I'm doing that for a few hours, and then that's over, so everyone kind of disperses, and I start to walk, and I make a left when I should have made a right, so I kind of get like lost in the hills of Lehigh. I'm walking around, and I see this guy that stands out because he's like 6'6", really long hair, and I'm like, oh, this is weird, like who could this guy be? And he turns around, and I see him. He's got, again, like long hair. He had like the little mustache going on right here. And he looks really lost. And so I see him kind of turn around and keep going. The next day, I'm at practice, and that guy walks out on the field. I realize it was Nick Foles. So as I begin my 7th training camp, it's just kind of crazy to think how much time's flown. Like my first training camp, Nick Foles was an unknown rookie walking around, lost at Lehigh. Today he comes to the NovaCare Complex as reigning Super Bowl MVP and potentially the starter for week 1. So time flies. Who knows what will happen over these next 5 weeks of training camp, but I just wanted to share my 3 best training camp memories during my time covering the Eagles.